Hello everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Ghost Variations here on Jessanori from my studio, my study, which is its normal self, as you can see. In yesterday's episode, Yeli Daranyi and her assistant Anna got a very strange message from a homemade Ouija board purporting to be from the spirit of Robert Schumann. And now Yeli thinks she has to decide what to do with it, but other events are about to intervene. Chapter 3. When Yeli tried to set off with Anna for Norman Hartnell's salon one morning a couple of weeks later, the Fakiri family car refused to start. Anna, whose duties extended to occasional chauffeurs, sat in the driver's seat, turning and returning the key. The car's coughs reminded Yeli of Anna's own. "It's not going to work." Anna climbed out. "We'll have to take a bus or taxi." Their part of Chelsea wasn't well served by trams. "I can go on my own," said Yeli. "You should keep warm with that cough." "I'm fine," Anna insisted, "and I'd so love to come along." The pair set off together along Netherton Grove towards Fulham Road, Yeli carrying her Bergonzi violin in its case. She always took it to dress fittings to make certain she'd be comfortable playing in the gown. Her shoes, though, were designed for style, not motion, which made it difficult to walk fast enough. Punctuality was ingrained in her. Nobody would book a performer who was never on time. At the corner, she spotted a large black car approaching. "Look, there's a taxi." She put up her hand, but it showed no sign of stopping. "That's not a cab," Anna laughed. "It's a hearse." The coffin-shaped back section was empty. "Not for you just yet, ladies," the driver called with a wave. Anna snorted. What a nerve. A bus was pulling in. They stepped onto its rear platform. Yeli stared after the hearse. The incident had left a particular chill upon her. Anna wanted to sit on the top deck in the open air, which afforded the best panorama of Chelsea and the river. "Aren't you cold?" Yeli worried. "There's such a wind. We should go downstairs." Anna obeyed reluctantly. "I love it up there." "Darling, I'm worried about you. You need to take care of yourself better." "Yeli, tell me," Anna changed the subject, "have you looked into, whether there really is a Schumann concerto?" "I haven't really had time." She tried to sound nonchalant. She didn't want to admit that she was far too scared of their glass messages to follow it up. The sunlit river came into view. Yeli, enjoying the sight, remarked that her mother used to say the glitter on the water was mermaids putting on their diamonds. Perhaps the Thames was home to some English counterparts of Wagner's Rhine maidens, she added, though the Thames maidens would probably be drinking tea and listening to a recital of gramophone records on the wireless. "Yeli," said Anna, "we shouldn't be going south." Silently cursing herself for still not knowing which is the right bus into town even after 6 years in Netherton Grove, Yeli nearly lost her balance hurrying towards the back, hanging onto the railing with one hand and her violin case and handbag with the other, while the bus plunged over uneven tarmac. "Please, could you tell us the best way to Bruton Street?" she asked the conductor, against the noise of the traffic. "Well, love, that's a grand foreign accent you've got, but I can't understand a word you're saying. Houghton Street, was it?" "Bruton Street." "Ah, I'd say you need to get off my bus and go to Wandsworth Town Station, just round that corner there. Change at Clapham Junction for Victoria." He looked Anna up and down. "You all right, miss?" "Fine, thank you." Flustered on the pavement, Yeli spotted a road sign pointing to the train station. But this was a part of London, not far from her home, that she wasn't convinced she'd seen before. All around, disused shops sat black-windowed and deserted. A patina of soot clung to glass walls and doorways. Men, workless though of working age, stood smoking in clusters, a group of passing women, faces pale and pinched, with hunger perhaps, were hauling along grubby and recalcitrant children, and Yelly winced as one mother lost her calm and cuffed a swallowing lad across the ear, which only made him cry even more. Sweating with alarm, in her clean coat, tailored blouse and tulip skirt, plus those wretched heels, she felt overdressed and seriously anxious about the time. She imagined hostile eyes following their every step across the road. A symbol caught her eye, scrawled on the filthy wall under the railway bridge, the crooked flash logo of the British Union of Fascists. Beside it, in ill-formed white-painted letters, were the words, Jews out. Wandsworth Town Station was set back from the parade of what used to be shops, and it was busy. People who had jobs were still on their way to work. They joined the stream on the stairs to the platforms, hemmed in on all sides, closer and closer by an army of clambering feet and swinging pointed umbrellas. Yelly felt the inadvertent thump of a heavy leather briefcase against her leg. Anna, just in front of her, was clutching the banister hard. Her chest was moving up and down, and Yelly, glancing at her hands, was struck by them. Were they really so skeletal? Why hadn't she noticed before? Above them, a train clattered in across the bridge, and she was wondering how to reach its doors despite the crowding, when Anna stood still, swayed, then crumpled. Yelly let out a cry in Hungarian, so shocked was she. Anna was struggling to get up, racked with uncontrollable coughs, gasping out, "Oh, sweet Jesus!" Her face was the colour of the clouds. "Darling!" Yelly put her arm around her to lift and guide her to the side of the landing halfway up the stairs, where she keeled over to the ground. "Speak to me!" Why was everyone walking on by without even looking? Anna had bent double like a piece of cardboard, trying to muffle her desperate spasms in the folds of her clothes. When she paused, heaving for breath, her coat had acquired a soot stain from the station floor. Along the grimy muck were bright red blotches of blood. "Someone please help us!" Yelly shouted. Looking at the blood, she was beginning to feel faint herself. By now they had attracted the station master, who took one glance at Anna, with Yelly cradling her prostrate form, and ran for a telephone. "Don't be frightened, there's help coming. You'll be all right." Yelly despaired of her own distraction. How could she have been so stupid as not to notice how ill Anna looked? Had she been working her too hard? Had she grown unwell so slowly that one small strain too much had tipped her over the edge? And never a complaint, never a word. Coughing blood, that was why the commuting crowd had rushed away from them. "Hartnell," mumbled Anna. "As if I'd leave you now." Anna's eyes, huge in her too thin face, gazed up into Yelly's at last. "You're so kind, Yelly," she said. "You're such a good, sweet, real sort of person, but we'd never tell you." The sound of a siren cut through the stairwell's echoes, and a minute later 2 ambulance men were pounding up the stairs towards them. Anna's pulse was taken, her condition assessed, and a stretcher brought. Yelly could hear the tension in their barked instructions. "She's my secretary and my friend," she told them. "I'd like to go with her, please." Yelly perched on a fold-out seat in the back of the ambulance, holding Anna's hand, searching her face for any sign of awareness. She had either drifted into a light sleep or started to lose consciousness. It had to be what Yelly feared, the dreaded tuberculosis, which nobody dared talk about even though it was everywhere. Less usual, though, in Chelsea, where they had assumed it was a disease of the slums and the doss houses. "That's an infectious disease, miss, and it can infect anyone," said the ambulance man, who was monitoring Anna's weak pulse. If only she had bothered to see her doctor sooner. "Don't let her die," Yelly prayed. "It's all right. She's not at death's door," he reassured her, "but she should have been with us a long time ago." "I envy your job. I should have liked to be a doctor." "What's the accent, miss?" "Can't say it's one I know." Yeli recognised the tone of voice. Suspicion. She used to hear it more often before, during and just after the war, the English loathing of anything foreign. Since the recent upheavals in Germany, the doubt had begun to creep back. "I'm Hungarian," she said, fighting back her alarm. "Hungarian? That's a rum one." She could hear his relief that she wasn't German. "When are you going back?" "I've lived here more than 20 years. "Oh yes, did you miss it? A country of your own?" "This is my country now," she said, still quailing a little. "Can't be easy being foreign, things as they are. What's in the box then?" "Violin. I'm a musician." "Oh, a Hungarian gypsy violinist." The ambulance man laughed aloud. He had no idea why she might not laugh with him. "Gypsy girls aren't allowed to play the violin," Yeli said, conversational, keeping her calm. She registered that they were driving uphill. "Where are we going?" "The Savoy." He gave her a wink. "Nah, miss, closest hospital there is. Putney. There in no time." They unloaded the barely conscious Anna on the stretcher. Yeli followed, her nostrils assaulted by a stench of disinfectant and blocked drains. Blinking, she took in the surrounding anxious muddle, the officious nurses, the pallid relatives of patients sitting on wooden benches in the lobby, hollow-cheeked faces, blank eyes. She had no doubt now that what she was seeing was hunger. This was the look of people who would give their children what food there was but go hungry themselves. It seemed impossible that they could afford their treatment. The papers were full of the way costs had been rising of late. Thinking of her own life, she wanted to hide somewhere for the shame of her shelteredness. How alien her world would seem to these people, yet, were it not for her music, she might have been one of them. The sea of greyness in front of her was punctuated only by the crimson flowering of bloodstains on Anna's clothes, quickly concealed with a sheet. "Give us a tune, love." One of the men caught her eye and winked. She smiled back. "I would, but—" She gestured at the ailing Anna on the stretcher. "Never mind," he rasped. He had the voice of a heavy smoker. "Probably only play for rich people anyway, don't you?" Yeli was trying to keep hold of Anna's hand. "Miss, we have to take her in to see the doctor," an apologetic nurse intervened. "Yeli," Anna opened her eyes with effort. "Don't worry, please go home. If you come back tomorrow, they'll have cured me." "Please take good care of her," Yeli said to the nurse, "and please send the bills to me. My Anna is more precious than rubies." Back at home, Yeli telephoned the salon to rearrange her fitting. Only hours ago it had been imperative not to be late for Queen Mary's preferred designer. Images galloped through her mind like speeded-up film. Anna, the ambulance man, the smoker's accusation, along with an imagined portrait of Tom confined to a hospital bed, emaciated and fading her, telling her to be true to her vocation. She longed to take a jug from Adila's kitchen and mix in it a spiritual punch, 1 part Hungarian energy, 2 parts empathy, 5 parts music. Then should pour out the magic potion for them all. Adila and Alec were going out that night with the Palmstianas. Eric had taken a box at the new theatre on St. Martin's Lane to see Richard of Bordeaux, a young actor in the leading role. John Gielgud was the talk of the town. "Come with us, Yeli," Adila pressed. "It'll cheer you up." Yeli didn't want to be cheered up. She preferred to stay home and get on with some work. She had been asked to perform a peculiar piece that had only just been issued. The score had arrived fresh off the press from the music publishing firm of Schotz in Mainz, a concerto supposedly written by Mozart aged 10, dedicated to Madame Adelaide de France, daughter of King Louis XV. It seemed to Yeli too good for Mozart at 10, but not good enough for Mozart any older. Perhaps it was by someone else, passing it off as the child's genius's work. She loved it anyway. Just because something wasn't perfect, that didn't mean it wasn't worth hearing. Now she had to memorise it. Adila had a systematic way to learn music by heart. Yeli simply remembered. Adila, who had studied for years with Professor Jeno Hubay back in Budapest and later with Uncle Jo, was organised and analytical. Yeli, 7 years younger, also went to Hubay, but never had another proper lesson after they moved to England. Her instincts seemed to carry her in the right direction. When little Madge Harvey-Webb, Adila's pupil and Adrienne's friend, said to her, "But Yeli, how do you do it?" all she could offer was, "I don't know, darling, I just do." Several hours vanished into the Mozart. By 10 p.m. her stomach was empty and grumbling. Wondering what Anna would eat in hospital if she were well enough to eat at all, Yeli closed her violin case and went down to the kitchen. Adila and Alec would go back to Portland Place with the Palmstianas for supper after the theatre. Maria, their maid, had the day off. Sometimes when Yeli was home on her own, which was rare, she would go to a small restaurant on Fulham Road. But tonight she felt too tired and too despondent to contemplate that. In the pantry, she found a basket of potatoes, onions, mushrooms and a cauliflower, plus some home-baked cake in a tin made with what Adila called a desecrated coconut. And on one shelf stood half a loaf of bread and a box of a dozen eggs. From the food saver, a silverish box that squatted by the pantry sink with a tray of ice and water at the bottom, she took out the butter and spread a little across 2 pieces of bread which she cut meticulously into soldiers. She found a small pan on the shelf next to the stove, filled it with water and popped an egg into it. When everything was working, she stood watching the egg bobbing up and down in the bubbles. Yeli wasn't sure how long an egg needed to boil. About 4 minutes, she thought. Did it start to cook before the water was actually boiling? You couldn't open an egg to see how it was doing, then put it back for longer. Her wristwatch had no second hand, so she ran up to the hall to time it by the one on the painted face of Alec's family grandfather clock. It was wrong too, of course. Every clock in the house told a different time. Downstairs, the water was dancing in the pan and the egg's shell had split, letting out some of the white. Yeli, resigned, fished it out and settled at the table to enjoy the messy yet welcome result of her endeavour. The morning dawned foggy, and Yeli found it difficult to wake up, having been more exhausted by Anna's collapse than she'd realised. Between sleeping and waking, though, she found an idea coming into focus. She wondered why such things so often took shape in the morning out of dreams. She did not, after all, only play for rich people. Adila was down in coffee. Yeli pulled on her raincoat, tied a light scarf over her hair and fetched her violin case. "I'm going to see Anna in hospital." "With your violin?" said Adila. "Definitely with my violin." And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.